All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Bleav in Bills. Adam Benigni, WGRZ TV, Sports Talk Live, Buffalo, Sal Maiorana, Rochester Democrat, and Chronicle. Sal, how are you, man?
I am good. Good to have you back, my friend. Missed you
Good
last
to be
week.
back. Good to be back. And OTAs underway out in Orchard Park, and no shortage of headlines. We'll talk about James Cook. I don't think we expected him to be at anything non-mandatory, and we'll get into that in a bit. But the one that kind of jumps out, and in a way is history repeating itself, is Joey Bosa, one of the big offseason acquisitions to fortify that pass rush, calf injury, out for the balance of the spring. We've kind of seen this before from him. It's been the concern, and another injury arrives early on in his Bills tenure.
Yeah, and let's hope that this is going to be it for him with the Bills because he has been an injury prone player. But, Adam, this is the time to get hurt. If you're going to get hurt and you're a 10-year veteran and whatever he is, 5-time Pro Bowler, missing the spring activities is about the least of the worries that the Bills should have about this guy. So hopefully, whatever the issue is with the calf, it gets worked out and he comes into training camp because that's when things obviously ratchet up, especially for him joining a new team. Now, again, he's a veteran player. If this was a second-year guy or something, you'd worry. I think Joey Bosa will be able to come back in training camp as long as he stays healthy and be fine. So there's nothing to worry about. Of course, McDermott says this yesterday, and the media has to make it into, a national issue. And it's not really a big deal in May. So let's just temper our concerns for now, and it'll be fine.
Well, it's not a big deal in May, but it is given the risk associated with signing a guy like that. I mean,
Well,
he's had a variety of injuries, and there's wear and tear issues and concerns, and you hear the word durability and all those things. It's at the very least sort of a yellow flag for me. I mean,
yeah, well,
that's where I sit on it.
yeah, and you're right. And no injury is good news, especially as I said for a guy joining a new team. You want to get out there with your new teammates and at least get to know guys. And I'm sure they're doing that in the meetings and in the weight room and all that stuff. But yeah, so it's not ideal, obviously. But again, this is this is touch football out there,
Mhm.
and as long as he's learning the playbook and he knows what his assignments are going to be, and as we said, he gets back for training camp and can actually go through the practices, which get more physical at that point, then everything will be fine. Now, again, with him too, Adam, this doesn't mean that he won't have another injury once training camp or the season comes, because this has been his MO for really the last 3 or 4 years. He cannot stay healthy. And that was always the concern when the Bills made this move to sign him. It wasn't a humongous contract. Is like it's $12 million for 1 year. Yeah, 12 million is 12 million, but it wasn't like it's the Von Miller deal, 6 years, 120 million, and now you really got a problem if the guy's hurt. They knew what they were getting into with Joey Bosa, and we can only hope that this is going to be a minor thing and that he can actually give them the one full season that they're paying for.
Well, and that's just it. I mean, we had talked about at the time of that signing and everything else, the risk reward, and we both liked the 1 year deal for that very reason.
Yeah.
But I think the reason, I mean, this time of year, I mean, entities are hungry for news and clicks and all those things. So a name like that with an injury is going to get headlines anyway. But the history
Yeah.
is what elevates that in terms of relevance, as far as
Yeah.
I'm
And
concerned. If he is
I
healthy,
also think, go ahead.
he's a significant. I mean, he's exactly what this team needed if they can keep him.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, too. He'll be hurt during these spring workouts now, but he's going to still be there, and he can be helping, especially the young guys who are on that team. He can even help Greg Rousseau. I mean, he could help Greg Rousseau become a better player just with his presence. You've got Hoyt's going to be there, the young kids that they've drafted. So I think he'll still have a key presence. He won't be doing the work on the field, but he'll be in the meeting rooms, classrooms, and all that stuff, lending expertise. So I think there's still value to having Joey Bosa right now, even though he's hurt. And then, as we said, as we get towards training camp, you hope things work out and he can play, because he should be, if they get a healthy Joey Bosa, he will be an impact player for the Bills this season.
Yeah, no question about that. James Cook stands to be an impact player for the Bills, certainly has been, and the
Yep.
expectation is that he will be this coming season. As expected, we've talked, it's kind of been one of the kind of storylines that have dragged on through the course of the offseason. Wants a new contract. 16 million. Ian Rappaport is the latest number that he's asking for. The Bills obviously aren't going to be willing to pay that. And so it's kind of this, and he went public with it. I think he kind of handled it in a way. Brandon Beane likes things done in-house, and he took the opposite approach. So I think that kind of ruffled some feathers a little bit. As expected, he's not there for anything voluntary. We'll see next month when mandatory minicamp in mid-June comes up. If he's not there then it becomes a very significant story. But at this point, I guess there's no sense that I get that there's been any thaw or warming trend in these negotiations whatsoever.
No, it looks like it's, right now it's an adversarial situation. And, I'm not too concerned about it at this point. These are voluntary. Many players have skipped the voluntary portions of the workouts. As you said, June 10th is whatever that is, Tuesday of June 10th, or maybe it's a Monday, when the mandatory minicamp begins. If he's not there, okay, then we've got a situation. But even then, Adam, I mean, okay, he'll take his fines for whatever the camp's going to be, 2 or 3 days, and then you go to training camp. Now that's where the rubber hits the road. If he doesn't show up at the start of training camp, then there's something that you start worrying a little bit about. But I don't think he'll be dumb enough to do that. I do think he'll be there for the mandatory minicamp. I don't think he'd be dumb enough to skip that. But I really don't think his agency, whoever, I don't even know who represents him, would tell him to sit out training camp, because these guys have got to know what the market is for running backs in the NFL. And James Cook is not like, he's not Jim Brown or some revolutionary player that's going to change the equation here. So I would think that they're going to get him into training camp and say, look, James, the Bills are being jerks about this. They're not going to give you the extension. You play the year out, and then you take it to free agency next year. And if they decide to use the franchise tag on you next year, you're going to put $14 million in your pocket for the 1 year and then go to free agency. He's still a young man. He is still going to get a second contract, whether it's in Buffalo or somewhere else. It may not be for $16 million a year, but hey, who's to know, Adam? Maybe there is a team out there that would do that and give him that deal in free agency. So his best move would be come in for the minicamp, make your appearance, avoid any more drama, and then just show up in training camp and do your job and go earn the contract that you think you so richly deserve.
Right. And the Bills' leverage point is that he has to be, if he wants to earn that contract, he has to be highly motivated to perform in 2020.
Yeah. I mean, he's had 2 good years. I mean, his first year was okay. He was the backup to Singletary. He was fine. 25% of the snaps he played and whatever. These last 2 years, he has been, you could arguably say, I wouldn't say Pro Bowl, but he has certainly been one of the top 10 running backs in the NFL in both years, really. So he's got a little bit of resume to lean on, but he still needs a 4th year to go prove himself. I mean, he's not Saquon Barkley. He's not Derrick Henry or any of these top guys, Josh Jacobs. It can go on and on here. He is still a young player in the NFL with a lot to learn and a lot to do. So the best advice would be get your ass in town and make your appearance. You've already made your statement here. You've laid your case out, what you think you're worth. Well, this is how a negotiation goes. So get into town, show some good faith, and hey, maybe that'll push things along, Adam. Maybe if he does show good faith and gets into camp and gets into training camp, maybe the Bills change their tune. I don't think they will at that price point, but it's at least worth it for him to do so.
Some final thoughts here before we wrap this edition up. In terms of positions, and again, because everything is so limited right now in terms of these workouts and what they can do. I mean, it's important for integration for young players, right? But there's so much stability in this franchise and track record of success. Couple of areas, you'd think defensive line, that was a key area they addressed. But until the pads go on, right, Sal, you don't get a real sense of what's going on there. But, cornerback 2, That's
Yeah.
something where I think if you're out there, I mean, that's an area to pay attention to, that you might be able to start to
Yeah.
glean something.
I mean, for us, when we're out, when the media is out there watching, I mean, it's really tough to make judgments. I mean, I see guys with their observations and this and that. It's really tough to do that. I mean, I understand why everybody does it, but you can't make any judgments on these touch football practices. Now, you're right about the receivers going against the DBs. At least something's happening there. Somebody is winning a battle typically on those plays. So I'm interested to see what, for instance, Josh Palmer is finally in town now. See what he can do against Max Hairston, the number one pick for the Bills. Those types of things are going to be fun to watch. Guys that I'll be looking for. As I said, I was off this week, so I'll be there next week, and then I'll be there for the minicamp. I'm going to want to see the cornerback Dorian Strong, because that's a kid that they picked him in the 6th round, but there's been a lot of buzz that kid's going to make the team. Now, whose spot does he take? That'll be interesting to watch as it plays out. Hey, it could be Dane Jackson, Adam. I mean, they re-signed Dane Jackson, but he certainly is no guarantee to make the team. Strong's going to be in competition with him. It'll be interesting to see Tre'Davious White, to see what he can do out there. Not that we don't already know what he can do, but still, it'll be interesting to see him competing again at age, 30 now, 31, coming off 2 serious injuries. We'll see what he has. So those things are interesting to watch, but really there's not even running backs. What are you going to watch a running back for outside of going out for passes? It's hard to judge what they're doing because there's no blocking happening. And with this Bills team, as you mentioned, really the most interesting places that we need to be looking are on the defensive line. And you just can't get a sense right now because of the lack of contact. So it's a little bit tricky from that standpoint.
I mean, on-field work's important, and they try and maximize the value of it at any point. But when you're a team that says, it's not like you're dealing with, a new coach or, a change at a coordinator or quarterback or that sort of thing. I mean, the Bills have this established, and so it's not like the reps, the complexion, the importance of the reps. I mean, it kind of altered in a good way when you're a team that's as established as the Bills are, with a quarterback that they have and the coaching staff.
Yeah. And I found it interesting, Adam, that, McDermott did cut short the OTA sessions. They were one of the teams that, I guess there was, I saw something, I forget how many teams it was, but they have an option to cut a week out of it if they want to, especially if you had a playoff run like the Bills did. So, because I was looking at the schedule when it first came out, and I was like, geez, we've only got access on 2 OTA days and the mini camp. Usually it felt like we had more. And then I realized, yeah, it's because the Bills came in a week later than they normally would have for all the stuff that they've done. And I think it even started with the voluntary, the workout session, not even the OT. I think that all started a week late. So, yeah, I mean, we haven't really been able to see much. A training camp will be interesting when we get there because of the defensive line. Honestly, that's where the focus is going to be. I think for a lot of people who end up going to Fisher, you're going to want to see what Deion Walker can do. Big 350-pound guy. Can he really play and be an impact player at that size? TJ Sanders was the 2nd-round pick. You're going to want to see what he can do. Obviously, Hoyt and Ogunjobi, we're going to see them in camp, and then we're not going to see them for 6 weeks. So those are all, and then Bosa, to see what he has when he comes back from this injury. Defensive line is fascinating this year. And that may not sound like the sexy thing to say because it's that trench warfare, but when training camp comes, that's where the action's going to be for this team.
Yeah. And as far as they're going to go in the postseason in terms of shortcomings and areas where, they needed to shore things up, that's going to be a focal point. And so, it naturally draws attention when things get going.
And those Hard Knocks cameras are going to be focusing on those players. So I mean, we didn't talk last week because you weren't here since the news. So I'm going to ask you, what do you think of the Hard Knocks situation? I gave my take last week, and I know that I'm right on this. That the Bills are pissed. They really don't want to do this, but they have no choice. They got to do it. So what's your take on it?
My take's exactly that. It is, sort of high degree of annoyance. Now, do I think that a McDermott coach team can manage that? Yes. But
Yeah.
if there's an example of something that goes against Sean McDermott's grain, Hard Knocks would be high on that list, right?
Yep.
I mean, he's so specific and detailed in terms of what he wants to do, and to have to deal with that sort of thing. I mean, it's just it's not something. He's like the NI Rex Ryan when it comes to that, in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
actually, right? And
And
so
I guess
that's
I
another
don't.
example.
I, I don't pay attention to that show because I watched it when it first started 20 years ago. It was interesting, but you and I, we live this. I mean, we're not behind the scenes like that show gets to go, but I spend enough time with the Bills and with the NFL in general. I really didn't care about going behind the scenes of the Packers and the Bears or whoever else it was. So I haven't really paid attention to the show at all. I'll admit that. And I guess I didn't realize that the Bills do not get a say in the editing process. So I got to think, though, and maybe you probably know the rules more than I do. I would think they can limit what they can actually film, but once they film, the Bills don't get a say in what gets cut. So if that's the case, and I think that is the case, I can tell you right now, the Bills are spending time in these OTAs. They're having meetings about what we're going to do and what we're
Right.
going to say when those cameras are on. This is going to be, they're going to try to choreograph this as much as they can, because they're not going to just give HBO free access and not be thinking about, okay, in this meeting, we cannot say this or we cannot do that. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's classes being given right now with the players about when those cameras are on in the meeting room. This is what we want you to look like and how we want you to act. So we'll see how genuine it turns out. But I think it's pretty funny that the Bills just hate this stuff and they have to
Oh,
do
right.
it.
Yeah, right. And that's the distraction point, right?
Yeah.
Especially for someone as detail oriented and focused and kind of culture focused as a Sean McDermott, is.
And
And
you made a good point on that too. That if there's any coach who can manage this, it is McDermott, because they
right.
have such a tight rein on everything that goes on over there. Anyways, the culture is already set, so I think they'll be able to negotiate it in a way where when that show pops up on Fridays, whatever it's going to be, they're not doing the Joe Shane and Brian Dable last week, wondering, oh my God, what did we just say? With that Saquon Barkley thing,
Right.
right? I don't think the Bills are going to get caught with their pants down too often in this show.
No. I mean, like you said, there'll be a plan, as there is for everything over there with regard to that. All right, that's going to do it. We'll talk to you soon, my friend, as the offseason continues. And
All
you
right.
can catch Sal Maiorana's Bills coverage, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, and WGRZ TV, Sports Talk Live, Buffalo, Monday nights, 7 o'clock with John Scott, Vic Carucci, and myself. So hope you join us for that. In the meantime, for Sal Maiorana, I am Adam Benigni, and thanks for being with us here on Bleav in Bills.